Lot of housing and it has been pretty much. Yeah. That's for camera. But I've got.
I did not realize that when I said it.
In Frederick, places renting for $60,000 for the week. It's like 480.
Good morning. Call your attention to the December meeting of the Audit Committee, and I'm going to call it Dr. Sullivan for a little brief introduction.
Very good.
So,
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the December meeting of the LCTCS Board of Supervisors Internal Audit Committee. Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that the Audit Committee is being live streamed, and with that, I'll turn it to Chair Salat.
thank you very much. Good morning once again. Appreciate attending and your attention. We'll call the meeting to order, but before that, we'll have a pledge, and LSU got to see the volunteer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a roll call.
I'll take a roll call. Chair Salat is present. Supervisor Burke
Here.
is present, and Chair Mount is present. We do have a quorum established.
Thank you very much. Okay. I would hope that everyone has seen the minutes from the August 9th meeting, which I did not attend. If there's any additions or corrections or deletions, if not, then a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll offer that motion.
Okay, motion by Chair Mount,
Second.
seconded by Burke.
Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move right into the project updates. We'll call on Mr. Fleming if he would.
I appreciate it, Supervisor. We'll get right into it. I appreciate everybody being here this morning. If you're on our report distribution list, you know it's been a busy few days. We've issued 4 reports since we last met in August. First one I want to talk about is Nunez Community College. We did a student financial aid review there. This wasn't a comprehensive financial aid review. What we did, we identified the top 10 common findings issued by the Department of Ed. These are the ones that not just our colleges, but all across the country they have trouble with. So we focused on those. We completed our review, and happy to report there were no findings, no reportable findings. So kudos to Nunez and their financial aid staff. That report, while we were working on that report, one of those top 10 findings is consumer information. And we looked at as an opportunity. Nunez had one of the best consumer information web pages in the system. Got us wondering, what do our other colleges look like? So we did another project, this one's system-wide, where we looked at consumer information is information that the colleges have to provide to the prospective students, current students, in some cases, parents of students. There's, I believe, 48 requirements. Not all of those are applicable to our colleges because a lot of those deal with housing, which we don't offer. There's a few other things that don't apply, but some of these are your cost of attendance, refund policy, textbook information, placement, job placement info. There's some security stuff that ties back to what we did with the Clary Act report back in April. So we didn't repeat that, but just to give you an idea what this information is required. We reviewed every college. Like I said, Nunez had no issues. Some of our colleges are a little further behind, and it's more of an organization type thing. They have the information, but it may not be put in the right place. The Department of Ed recommends having, one link on your website that'll take you to everything. And so we're really pushing for that. The good news is even the colleges, when you look at the report, you'll see some that have a non-compliance rate that is maybe considered high. The good news is some of these fixes can be done in a day. All of them could be done in a month time. So one of the colleges we visited, they had a high non-compliance rate, but they had just switched websites, their web server. So we're dealing with a lot of broken links. Again, something they can contact IT about and get fixed almost immediately. So this project was good in that not only we were able to do the entire system in one look, but the fix it offers them a quick fix and they're being fully compliant. So I would say by February, all of our colleges in the system will be fully compliant with consumer information, which is a big deal because it's, like I said, one of the top findings when the federal auditors come, they'll ding our schools for. So this is something we won't have to worry about. And going forward, now that's been brought to their attention, hopefully something they can stay on top of. So those are the two.
If I may, just one quick point that it's ongoing. In fact, I'll make this point to you because I read the article in the Chronicle this past week. One of the nation's, one of the nation's private Christian colleges was hit with a $37 million fine for some of these very issues just this past week. So what's happening now is the federal government is going through and systematically going state by state and conducting audits in every state with the intent of identifying issues so that they can find people to say, hey, we're the federal government. We have $100 billion to dole out to you for financial aid, but you got to do it according to these rules. Some of what they're doing, frankly, I think, and the U.S. Department of Education hopefully is listening up. Those folks need to understand they are trying to bait individual states into the situation that we're dealing with right now. Just to say, we hold the dollar. It's frustrating. Jeff, the work that you guys are doing here will certainly save us money longer term. I just want to make sure that you understand the relationship between the U.S. Department of Education and our colleges is not what it once was. Let's just say it in that form. This particularly goes back to the failure under the Obama administration of Corinthian College. This is very much of a democratic approach to say we're going to put the screws to these colleges that are doing the wrong thing to students. But along the way, you see institutions that are trying to do the right thing get caught up. So just be aware that there is a big discussion going on out there from a US DOE point of view, financial aid point of view with our colleges. And Jeff, the work you're doing is certainly helping us to be prepared for that. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, this is the type of stuff that they love to write up because it's easy to identify. I mean, they can go on your website and in an hour have you 5 or 6 findings. So this type of stuff is important to stay on top of. The next report,
If you will, excuse me, I want to congratulate Community College on their
list.
success. And we're very fortunate to have the chancellor here. Go ahead.
Sure. The next project I want to talk about is Central Louisiana. We did a travel card review. As you know, we bring this up at every audit committee meeting. We're required to do these reviews. It's not, the supervisor had a question for me yesterday. It's not that our colleges are having a lot of issues. It's that we're required to do these reviews by the Office of State Travel. If we don't do them, our colleges will be written up by the Office of State Travel, and they write the finding for the college, not internal audit. So I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if I'm the reason why our colleges are having to respond to findings. So next on the list was Central. We get everybody on a 3-year cycle. They do not use a purchase card, so it's strictly a travel card review. They had one finding, minor finding. So when you go to a conference for the college, these conferences offer, a conference group rate. A lot of times these conferences are in big cities. It's more than our per diem allows, which is fine, but you have to document that, hey, I went to the conference, this was the conference rate, and the college did that. But what they didn't do is upload the documentation into the state's travel card system that tracks these purchases. So Office of State Travel, they consider that a finding. They consider you did not support the charge in excess of the hotel rate. So they had a few of these instances where they weren't uploading documentation. Now, all of these were in compliant with state travel regs. They just didn't upload the documents. So that's the good news. They're not doing anything wrong from a travel approval perspective. They just weren't getting it uploaded. And they've put a process in place going forward that prevents this. The travel card approver anytime there's any type of hotel stay, they're uploading this documentation going forward. So as far as Central goes, we should see.
Question for you. What do you use to set? Do they know the rate? Are you using the GSA?
Yes, yes, it's a GSA rate, but
And lately you can't. Just simple, because I have to do the same thing, but lately you can't find anything
right,
that, so they're giving you $110 and the cheapest you can find is 2 something.
Yeah.
So then that backup is what they need.
correct. Correct. For the conferences, you're allowed a conference rate, but also if you can't find one that's not related to a conference, a proper rate, you can get an approval from your agency head in advance. And again, no, I didn't see any of those. These were all tied to conferences. They just weren't uploading the documentation showing, hey, this was the conference hotel, this was the conference rate.
The GSA rates are fall behind what's available right now.
Big time.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. Any questions about the?
Any questions?
Okay.
You want to move into the audit plan?
No, last one, ADA. This was a part of our, I call it our compliance series. Last year we did Clery Act. This one was a review of the Americans with Disabilities Act from the student perspective. What we did was we put a questionnaire together. I worked with Dr. Amber Blair at the system office, who's now the ADA coordinator from the student side at LCTCS, and we put together a questionnaire of all the key components that the colleges need to be aware of and kind of get a snapshot of where you're at, where we can be better, where they need help. And it was a lot of data that's what this produced. And I've given all this data to Dr. Blair and she's hit the ground running with it. But we did find a few areas where our colleges could improve. One was with a self-evaluation plan. The Office of Civil Rights, which is kind of the stick as far as ADA goes, is they require a self-evaluation plan. Our colleges are kind of behind on this, and a lot of them, what they said was, we just need guidance on how to do this, how to execute the self-evaluation plan. So Dr. Blair is going to support them in that effort. Another simple one, procurement. When you on your procurement policies, you need to make sure that any piece of technology that you buy or any physical asset that you buy, if it's applicable, that you make sure it's accessible for persons with disability. This doesn't apply to every purchase, but when it does, you just have to have that caveat on your procurement policies. And then kind of tying into, like I mentioned, Dr. Blair becoming the ADA coordinator for the system. Every ADA coordinator at our colleges asked for more system office support. So kind of out ahead of that, she became ADA coordinator in October. This wrapped up in November. So she's putting together a training effort, which will commence, I believe she told me, in April. So that support that they're looking for, that mentor, for lack of a better term, that's here coming. So I think that's great. And a lot of the issues that they have can be solved by having that person at the system office to support them in their endeavors. And lastly, software uniformity. A lot of the resources that we use for students with disabilities are technology based. And the colleges use all sorts of different type of solutions. Some may already be tied into a contract already, or they prefer something. The system office does offer certain products that they've negotiated a contract rate. In my estimation, based on the feedback I've gotten, is we should probably push towards focusing on specific solutions for each issue. Not only cost savings, but from a training perspective. So if the system office is going to provide training and resources to our colleges, it's a lot easier to do that with 3 technology platforms than 20, And again, every college is unique. They need to do what's best for them. They need to make those decisions, but it is something to consider going forward. If you want that system office support, it would benefit the college and the system if they were using the same type of technology. That's it as far as projects that we've completed. Are there any questions about those? Like I said, we wrapped up these and they've kind of all been issued in the last week or so. So projects in progress, we only have one that is restricted fees at Bossier Parish Community College. Restricted fees, this is a project that you approved in August at the audit committee meeting for our audit plan. We get a lot of questions on fees. We have this fee, can we use this for this? We looked at unrestricted fees last fiscal year. This time we're looking at restricted fees. We're limiting this to one college right now. We're gonna kind of use it as a test case rather than a system-wide review. These are tech fees.
Explain what that means, restricted versus
Yeah,
unrestricted.
restricted fees are, these are, so we're
They have an
by law.
external restriction placed on them, usually by legislation.
Right,
Or some parameters external to the agency that says you are authorized to assess this fee, but it must be used within these parameters.
right,
So they're very more specific.
right. And
Unrestricted is not.
And the restricted fee balances at some of our colleges are quite large. So that's what this review will cover, is making sure they're being spent within those parameters. Because like I said, we get a lot of questions related to these.
And the reason though, some context, the reason why the restricted fees are normally have a larger balances than unrestricted fees is that your unrestricted fees, you can't carry over from year to year, because with your restricted fees, you can. So colleges at year end make it a point to, colleges and universities throughout the state, make it a point to make journal voucher entries to use up their unrestricted fee revenues, since they can't carry them over, and to then free up restricted revenues and put them back into that fund so that they can carry them over from year to year. So it's really a fiscally prudent practice that has been done for years. It's something, that's not apropos, but it's just something that occurs.
So in April, we'll have that report presented to you in completion, and we'll be able to discuss that further.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay, we want to move into the other report. Joey, you want to share with us?
Well, yes, sir. So we are in the season of giving and we're in the season of audits. And so what's been happening now for the last maybe 4 months is the Legislative Auditor's Office is starting to issue or has issued a few reports, some as recent as of today. But in that process, there were 2 reports issued related to, they had findings in them related to Nunez Community College, related to their title as inadequate controls over student accounts. And we'll talk about that. And the other one, Fletcher, is 2 findings related to bank reconciliations and bank recons and weakness over accounts receivables and payables. So on the Nunez one, it's one that all of our colleges deal on an annual basis related to suspected, quote unquote, suspected student fraud. And depending on what your policy, your internal policy at the college dictates, it dictates that you have to take certain action versus not. This is what they deemed Nunez in this case was they took a sample. Of that sample, there were so many that were identified as suspected fraud by the college. And again, what does that mean? Suspected fraud could mean you have a batch of students with somehow have a same email extension, like a Gmail or whatever it could be, that just kind of raises a little concern. It could be a bunch of student accounts that all of a sudden hit at the same time that shares similarities that again just raise some suspicion among the college. Regardless of the level of suspicion, once the college identifies, at least in this case, and in this case, once it's identified as being suspect, their policy dictated that those students' accounts had to have holds placed on them, basically frozen. The college chose not to place holds on them. Again, it's depending on the level of severity of suspicion, I guess. But be that as it may, the policy doesn't make that distinction. The policy says that you do X as a result of Y, and therefore it was a compliance finding related to that issue for Nunez. With Fletcher Community College, they got a finding related to weaknesses and controls again over their bank reconciliations that occurred oddly enough, and I'm not necessarily excusing them, but it occurred during the time of Hurricane Ida. When the hurricane hit and they had their director of accounting also depart. Since that time, they have tightened up the process. A lot of it had to do with not documenting supervisory review of the bank reconciliation. So they have tightened up that procedure. The other finding was related to accounts payables and receivables, specifically as it relates to write-offs. So let's basically give some context in terms of what does that mean. When something is written off by any state agency, it doesn't mean that it's forgiven. That debt is continued to be pursued until the end of time. We'll probably all be dead and gone, and the AG's office and the Office of Debt Recovery will be pursuing those debts. But what it does realize and recognize is that from a financial reporting perspective, you should not, the likelihood of collecting on those debts is slim. So you should therefore write them off your financial books so that you don't have an overstated or overinflated positive financial picture, in the sense that you'll never really probably collect on these. And in many cases, the system policy relates to writing off debt that has been beyond 2 years. The college, for whatever reasons, we're not doing that. They have since implemented new procedures to tighten that up. And both colleges are here to answer any questions you might have beyond that I can answer.
If I may, I want to go back to the fraud discussion. Ultimately, I think this body, the Internal Audit Committee, has been aware of some challenges that we've been dealing with as a system now for probably about 3 years. It really ramped up during the time frame of COVID, because when the federal government used the student financial aid mechanism to push out billions of dollars to people, it caused a lot of people with ill intentions to apply for and become enrolled. So it puts our students in, our employees in a place where they are getting up every day and going to work and pursuing a mission that is educating and skilling people. But yet they spend 80% of their day trying to figure out fraud. These folks did not go to school to be investigators. They did not go to school to learn how to do the kind of work that Jeff does. But yet the federal government, our Louisiana legislative auditors, want to cause our people to spend their time pursuing fraud. We are not a fraud organization. We are an educating organization. So our friends at the legislative audit need to come to terms with that, and they need to work with the U.S. Department of Education to solve this issue. We are not the ones that will solve this. When the federal government sends down $100 billion, there will be flies. And so when you attack our institutions and our reputation because the federal government is sending down hundreds of billions of dollars, then you got a problem. That's what I'm saying to you. We need to be in a place with our audit friends where they understand our goal is not to solve the fraud problem. Our goal is to educate the people of Louisiana. Now, here's the distinction that we're asking an employee to make. We're asking an employee to decide if someone stole Jeff Fleming's personal information and enrolled as Jeff Fleming, or whether Jeff Fleming enrolled. Can you help me understand how we're supposed to determine that? We are not investigators. We are not police officers. We are not any of these things, but yet that's what we're being asked to do. So I urge you to keep in mind that we have groups out there who want to place a burden on our colleges that is not our responsibility. If the federal government wants to fix this, they will hire more inspectors. But right now, we're not in the business of going out and hiring a group of people to solve the federal government's problem. That's probably enough.
So I assume the federal government holds the schools responsible for replacing the money that's found out that went to a
Yes, sir.
fraudulent, whether you get the money back or not.
Exactly.
Don't take it out of your eye.
Exactly. And
That's what I figured. But
that's the frustrating part, because the federal government made the decision to send money to a collective of people that may or may not have deserved that dollar. And now when they put the billions of dollars into the system, now everybody says, oh, I want to be a student. So let me give you an
so the
example.
money comes directly to Ellisburg, not to BRCC, and then BRCC would then.
Yes, sir. So ultimately, BRCC winds up being the entity that is on the hook for the money that you receive.
They sent to me
Yes.
directly and I just pay with.
Exactly. Now, there are those who will say, well, maybe the LCTCS doesn't want to play in Title IV. Well, the reality is Title IV has shifted across time. When the federal government made the decision to push out resources using the student financial assistance mechanism, that's where the problem came in. I didn't make that decision. You didn't make that decision. The federal government made that decision. And that's what's causing the number of flies that we have that are pursuing free money. I mean, if you had $100 billion operation, don't you think there would be people who would be pursuing their share of the $100 billion? That's what's going on. No different.
And we've had this issue come up with discussions for years regarding misappropriation of assets reporting.
Yeah.
And so we took hits because we were trying to do due diligence to vet those before referring them to the AG's office, district attorney, legislative auditor's office. And so now we're to the point of, we're basically Lucille, in chocolate factory analogy, we are basically Lucille Ball at the chocolate factory, pushing them down the line to those parties. And to my knowledge, I don't know if anyone's ever been prosecuted, given all the multiple reports we've handed out to those other entities.
I won't say something here.
Yeah, so I mean, it becomes a, okay, this is what you want, you got it.
So actually, we did do this one time and we did it exceptionally well. It was at Bossier Parish Community College. We had a group of individuals who were perpetrating fraud by stealing the identity of individuals that were incarcerated, enrolling at the college, getting financial aid, and then having that check come back to the individual. So we've dealt with several of these, but the question becomes, these are online enrollees, so you don't get a face-to-face opportunity. So they're trying to play as many games as they can to get to the dollar. Just please know that we take this seriously. We won't. I mean, the biggest challenge that we have is, I was at Delgado the other day and one of the provosts said to me, we had 600 students who, upon the development of new sections of anatomy and physiology, 600 new students enrolled in those sections. And the question becomes, are those real or not? So how much time do you have? How many personnel do you have to try to figure that out? And we're going right into the start of the semester, in the spring semester, right? So you get the point. We would have to have double the personnel in order to be able to do this any better than what we're doing it right now.
Any other comments?
Well, on a positive note, we do have 2 audits issued for, with no findings for Bossier Parish Community College, and Delgado's was just made public about 30 minutes ago. And we expect a few others to come out with, in the near future with no findings as well. So things are looking good.
Those 2 institutions in particular and no findings is substantial. And in particular at Delgado, it has taken Chancellor Stibe 10 years to clean up after the last guy. So I think with a clean audit, that's good stuff, right?
It was such a,
We don't know his name, it's money, so that ain't it. In light of the discussion that we just had, I just throw it out as a question. Would it be appropriate that we, perhaps think about drafting a letter or a communication to the auditors, the burden that's being placed on us? And we're not the only institution that's facing it. I mean, I'm not recommending that we start a war, but perhaps inside the Christmas card, we kind of let them know what we're thinking. Yes. Is that something appropriate? I don't want to charge LCTC with that. Just the discussion perhaps needs to go a little further. And Joe, you think it's appropriate?
I think it's appropriate because
Do you agree? Yeah, it's a discussion like Joe said, we had preliminary discussions a few years ago when they were asking for all this information. I guess we just kind of bent the knee there, but yeah, going forward, I think it's worthwhile.
I mean, the concern is that if you're constantly getting dinged for this behavior or not doing certain things because of, again, suspected fraud, when suspected is very vague, the fear I have is that, someone says, well, you know what, I'm not gonna identify anything as suspect, or that threshold is gonna be much greater than what it probably should be, right? So, behavior is shaped by penalties and rewards, and in this case, it could go not well.
Well, perhaps the tone should be that it appears that we're being challenged with suspicious activity, and it looks like it's gonna take a lot of manpower to address that. I'm not wanting to jump right in and resist, but just kind of like put them on notice that we're realizing what you're asking of us to do in the future. And if they're successful in gaining any funds, then they're gonna press forward. It's gonna be a greater demand.
Is anybody, look, I don't know, so I'm asking very basic, simple questions. So how much is lost compared to how much or how many man hours would have to be put towards stopping the loss? That they balance out of this amount's gonna get far more than this amount and the fines? Is it something, I don't know how to say this politically, correct? When you deal with this because this amount is gonna far outweigh.
The risk reward is on this scale. To give you an idea, I'll use the Delgado example again, 640 or some students that registered. You're gonna take 10 to 12 students to walk through every one of those cases. I'm sorry, 10 to 12 employees are gonna need to walk through those scenarios for everyone. So the question becomes, is it worthwhile?
Yeah.
Because then you gotta go back and look at that group of individuals and figure out, hey, did they pay? Or did they just register in the course? We put some pieces in place. I thought the finance staff did a great job of when an individual comes in and pays. Challenge that we were having was we were reimbursing that individual in another form of payment. And so they could take a stolen credit card, pay, and then get reimbursed. We eliminated that. Now you have to put that charge back on the original stolen card. So they have no ability to be able to
get the cash in your hand.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So we've made several adjustments on the back end of this thing, but we've reached a place where we can't do the mission because our folks are worried about trying to rustle fraud over here.
You'd have to have a complete different department to deal with that. You can't put the burden on the chancellors and the people in the front office.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Can I just add something too, relative to the current student loan program, for example, the NSLD loans, national student loans, the direct loans. Those loans, those students now apply directly to the federal government as opposed to in the previous programs, they worked with the colleges and the universities. And at that time, people were seeing them face to face as they applied. Now, a lot of this happens outside the college's control, and they get back from the federal government a list of students where they want the colleges to go and determine whether or not they are appropriately eligible. That's all fine and good. You're not catching 100%, but that's all on the back end. And then if the college finds something wrong with one's eligibility, then it's like the college is the entity that gets dinged because you gave aid to a student who wasn't eligible. And I think that contributes to the problem as well.
Well, the other thing, we're also just to let y'all know that we are undertaking an initiative with one of our software vendors related to disbursements of students. They have a product they've presented. We actually presented it to the finance staff at conference day that they claim that they can use AI to some extent, not facial recognition per se, but they can use some type of system to kind of vet pretty quickly students' information and triangulate and more easily help us identify those students who may be suspect. So again, it's just like with cybersecurity. How much is enough? It's never enough, right? Because the bad guys have enough time and more time and resources than we have.
Question is though, should we spend limited resource of our system on that technology when we have no control over the rules, as you just heard? The rules are being written for us, right?
Well, let me ask this. So the federal government, this one is fraudulent. We need this money back. Second finding, this one's fraudulent. we need the money back plus a fine? Does the fines keep growing to the point that, wait a minute, we have to do something? It's gonna, you get dinged for $1,000 fine, then $10,000 fine and stuff like that. Is that how it works or no?
It's not necessarily penalties, it's just the money back.
It's just the money back.
Balance you're out. Like, the scale is so big is the thing. With these federal dollars that came out.
But remember now, so we're talking about return to Title IV, which means now the college is responsible for a $2,500 payment back to the feds on behalf of Ellsberg, right? So go back to the audit that I mentioned to you a second ago. So the U.S. Department of Education comes in and does an audit state by state, individual institutions. When they find challenges, what they do is they're going out and they're hitting people with a really hard fine to make sure that they understand.
Right.
The problem is that they created the
The
problem.
problem, correct. But they want you to solve
And
it.
they want us to solve it and they want us to pay for it, right? And that's what we're trying
Federal
to.
government is not behind. We're gonna keep hitting you with a fine until you get yourself straight because of our mistake.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I was trying to say. That's when it becomes, we have to do something about this because it's getting carried away. This pile over here is outweighing everything.
That's exactly right. The interesting part, and as you mentioned, the direct application to the U.S. Department of Education, I want you to think about that. They're taking the college out of the middle. When they take the college out of the middle and now they give a loan to somebody, and now they're gonna come back to the college and say, wait, you removed us from it and now you want us to be responsible for it at some level. There's some really interesting dynamics that are going on.
So then what happens if it goes back to the other way? Then you need to put on a whole department to handle the money coming to you to hand out to these students again. So you're still putting on,
One way or the other, right?
you're still putting on people, manpower.
Look, let's just say it this way. To me, this is why the role of internal audit is so darn important right now. Because we need to be able to do this in a way that it's helpful to the people at the colleges. The folks at the U.S. Department of Education, they can scream all they want. Guys, they can write findings, that's great. But the reality is we got a job to do and it's educate people. It's not to pursue fraud.
Okay, well, thanks for the lively discussion. We'll start at 7:30 next time. Okay, is there any additional information or comments to bring before the committee?
I'd like to bring up one point. We made a new hire in September, Hope Corbin.
I know.
She brings a different expertise than we've had. She has an IT background. She came from the legislative auditor. Don't hold that against her. But with her in the department, we're gonna be able to do more IT focused projects. I've also coerced her into learning some data analytics stuff, so it's really gonna improve the quality of work that we produce. You're looking at the entire LCTCS internal audit department. But I say it's quality over quantity. Everything you do is because of them, and I can't thank them enough. Obviously, tremendous leadership on my part.
Keep it up, Jeff.
They're a lifesaver. So.
Thank you.
Very good. If there isn't any other business to come before the board, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a nice holiday season, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So the
All right, second, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you, thank you. Good job, Jeff, and I'm glad you're modest.
Humble.
We know. Thank you.
Winter.